that conversation. People are going, who the hell is Matthew Sluka? He played 4 years at Holy Cross.
Mm-hmm.
He's good. He got what he claims was a $100,000 promise, albeit not in writing, from the UNLV football collective. Got there. The Rebels, I don't know if they're running in football. They are in basketball. The Rebels are 3-0. They just upset Kansas to knock the Jayhawks out of the ranks of the unbeaten. And because he's only received $3,000 of the $100,000 for moving expenses, based on what I've read, he bounced. He went, see ya. I'm preserving my red shirt and getting out of the desert. It's an interesting story, Chip. What are your thoughts on it?
A modern one. Yeah, a modern story.
It is.
You know?
And I've been trying to tell local fans, it's a story that you should pay attention to because it could happen anywhere.
I think it is happening right now because we're right at that mark. Right? You know, you can play up to 4 games, and as long as you don't play more than that, then you can preserve your year of eligibility. And in the NIL era, do you know what a year of eligibility is? A year of earning power.
That's right.
And for a quarterback like Sluka, he's going pro in something other than sports.
Right.
His maximum earning power
yes.
for football is right now. He is a prospect who, talking to some personnel people around the country, you know, there are things that he does well. There are things that are interesting about him. He's a playmaking guy. He's good on the run.
Yeah.
He is not a drop back, you know, light you up down the field. UNLV's offense has been successful, but off to a 3-0 start for the first time since trivia.
Randall Cunningham.
That's right. You got it. 1984. Randall Cunningham was the quarterback at UNLV. There you go. So I think that I think everybody looks bad. All right, flat out. Everyone looks bad here. It reveals some things that are wrong with the system. And again, to give you some of my information that I have learned, and this is one of the things I love about stories like this, much like the sign stealing scandal last year, you start talking to people on staffs and you start to realize a little bit more. Like, there are very, very few recruits who are truly able to get in writing an NIL offer until they arrive on campus.
Right.
Like, I was speaking to somebody who says, like, we actually can't do that. Now, the rules are unenforceable, and if you're somebody like 5-star #1 overall prospect, then a program says, yeah, whatever, put it in writing because we got to get this guy locked down.
Right.
But if you're somebody like a quarterback coming from Holy Cross who's entertaining group of 5 offers, guess what? UNLV might not be willing to break the rules just to be able to secure your commitment, especially when you are one of 2 transfer quarterbacks that they took in the very same class. As in, yeah, they got other options. So they get off to a fast start. He hires representation. The representation would like for the full payment. The coach says, hey, buddy, that's not with me. I'm here to coach the football. That's with the collective. And I think that this is all things that, I mean, Adam, you know, music to your ears, could really be addressed with employment and collective bargaining.
It's funny you bring that up. I asked Graham to find it. We couldn't find it. At the Final Four this past year, Doug Gottlieb, who was out there for his, I don't even know if it's his day job or his side hustle, working for Fox Sports Radio, because he's also the basketball coach at Wisconsin Green Bay. And I'm not even sure what's the side hustle, what's the day job. But we were I talked to him about doesn't college sports need collective bargainings? And because Gottlieb is so dug in against athletes realizing their value in the marketplace that he goes, they already have everything they want. What more could they want? I said, Doug, this is not really for the athlete. It's for the schools. The schools would benefit every bit as much from collective bargaining as the players would, and I could pose an argument that says the schools would benefit more from collective bargaining than the athletes. At worst, it's 50-50, But people like that can't see how it would benefit both sides, give us certainty over this and that and all these things. We would know that, all right, here's what is owed to, again, I can't even remember his name, Matthew Sluka. I keep thinking of Sergeant Hulka. Is Matthew Sluka the big toe of UNLV football? Don't answer the question. So, yes, collective bargaining, I think, is the only legitimate answer to all of college football's player payment issues. Collective bargaining will solve these problems.
Look, your audience across this unprecedented statewide platform ranges in age, generation, experience, and this really is enough to make your head spin. So I think that I can condense this down. The way the current system is set up, coaches cannot put together NIL packages.
Right.
Those have to come from the collectives. The collectives cannot get you to sign a contract for NIL packages until you have committed and are on campus. Mm-hmm. Coaches, therefore, are not in control of NIL and cannot control what the NIL collective is promising. They're just trying to get your commitment, and then it is up to the NIL, not the coaches, to follow through on this. So where this breaks down is that across the country, verbal agreements are holding up free agency. And in no other place where sports is held in America do we just fly on verbal agreements. Mm-hmm. And you know where else we don't do that? Coaches. Because go talk about Mr. Frank Beamer to North Carolina. Oh, I heard he was at the Governor's Club. How many coaching deals have fallen apart?
Roy Williams the first time.
This past cycle, what got Mike Elko to Texas A&M was a Mark Stoops situation breaking down literally at midnight.
Right.
The players are operating in an untenable environment of free agency that is based on verbal agreements that aren't even with the coaches they are committing to, and that is broken. It's broken for the players, it's broken for the schools, and this example is highlighting that issue, and I'm going to say it again. There are players that we are going to hear are hurt that I think would play in another scenario if they weren't trying to already eye the door. And I think that's really, really bad for the sport.
No, there's no doubt about that. First of all, did you guys on the Cover 3 podcast talk to Sluka's brother?
Bud spoke with Sluka's brother on the phone 20 minutes before we went on. We invited him to come on, but he said he had a meeting. I know Sluka's dad has also been making the rounds here. And, Bud was like, why don't you have anything in writing? Well, why'd you agree to it? And Sluka's brother said, hey, well, we had other offers that we could have taken that we did not take because of this offer from UNLV. And that's what had us doing a little bit more digging, speaking to some personnel people where I was able to get the new information on. It's the exceptions are made, but not every recruit is worth making an exception that's against even what might be unenforceable rules to get you to sign a binding document before you have actually already committed and arrived on campus.
All right, so we're about 8 minutes into our conversation here. And for people who might be listening to, this is Chip Patterson, CBSSports.com, Cover 3 podcast. It's my favorite time of the week, every week. For people who have not listened to you on this radio station talk to me before, this is why this is the best, however long we go, the best time of the week. Because I've got 16 different things I would like to talk to you about this particular issue, because it is so unbelievably fascinating. So you say it's unenforceable, except that the fact that the NCAA insists that these agreements cannot be pay for play, which is exactly what they are, what they always have been under the table since the dawn of recruiting. These things have gone on. But since the NCAA insists that they cannot exist, that's what primarily has destroyed the House versus NCAA settlement. Because when the NCAA said, oh, by the way, we're banning pay for play, and Jeffrey Kessler and everybody else went, what? And the judge went, what? So, yeah, back to the drawing board, and that I don't know what kind of an agreement we're going to get out of that, but the NCAA insists on banning pay-for-play when the simple solution is really just collective bargaining. One other thing you said about Sluka's value, right? Mm-hmm. Because it gets me back to something I talked about when Marcus Page was a basketball player at UNC. And we all knew we could watch Marcus Page, and we knew, as much as we wished it would be different, Marcus Page was not going to be an NBA player and was likely not going to be a successful enough international professional basketball player to make really good money. But much like Armando Bacot at UNC, Page could have banked so much money if NIL was the law of the land when he was at North Carolina. I wish that he played, like 6 years later, so he could have taken advantage of that. Unfortunately, he did not. I thought Page would have been an absolute star in the NIL world. All right, let me move on. UNLV, last I checked, was in the Mountain West. Are they still in the Mountain West?
They're like the linchpin holding this thing together.
Jerry Tarkanian is rolling over. All right, so
you know what's funny? Right, do you remember the SNL sketch? What's up with that?
Yes.
All right, and remember the running gag was we don't have time for Lindsey Buckingham. Like at the end of it, it's like, oh, and Bill Hader plays Lindsey Buckingham, and he's like, oh, Lindsey, sorry about that. We'll get to you next time. This round of conference realignment is the Lindsey Buckingham of the Cover 3 podcast. I've put it as a not top item because I don't think it's a top item. I put it as a not top item on the rundown 7 episodes in a row. We just haven't gotten to it.
Well, I'm fascinated by the fact that the Pac-12. First of all, I know there's a rule because it was pointed out to me when I questioned why South Florida, Tulane, Texas, San Antonio, and Memphis, why they would possibly leave the American for that version of the Pac-12 after the Pac-12 added to Oregon State and Washington State, San Diego State, Fresno State, Boise State, Colorado State, and then eventually Utah State.
Right.
I'm like, why would you join that league? And the rule is apparently because the Pac-12 is still theoretically a league that they would automatically get a spot in the college football playoff. But what I don't understand is there a network that would look at those collection of schools and want to pay it any significant money to show their games? And I would say probably not.
So the further reporting pretty much across the board is that the college football playoff decision makers have zero plans of reintroducing the automatic qualifier that was taken away when the Pac-12 split up and ran.
Good.
That is Yahoo. Well, that is NBC.
Right.
That is that's all the usual suspects. The white wine we hang out with admin crowd. No, much love to those people. They're all very, very nice. But yeah, when the text goes out and you just see the flood of all the usual suspects all reporting basically the same company line, you're like, okay, well, this is the way it goes. And the way it goes is Pac-12 might get to 8 to be able to be identified as a conference at the FBS level, but that does not mean the college football playoff has any reason to bring them back into the fold with the same kind of payouts, the same kind of structure, and the same kind of amount of automatic qualifiers as they had when the Pac-12 still existed. So this is about the fact, as it was explained to me, is that the Pac-12 has the intellectual property of the Pac-12, and therefore with advertisers and a coffer of money from all the buyouts that all these teams have paid are able to offer something that is financially intriguing to these Mountain West teams. The decision that was on the table and the decision that was made by a USF, by a UTSA, by a Tulane, and by a Memphis earlier this week was they looked at the offer and they recommitted themselves to the American Athletic Conference, that whatever was in that offer was not worth breaking from the certainty that they had, because their belief inside the American is that they are as strong, if not stronger, than whatever the Pac-12 is going to build, even if they've got this buyout war chest and intellectual property and digital rights studio. Like there's a reason why Oregon State and Washington State are plowing ahead into the future. There's a reason why Mountain West teams are leaving the Mountain West just to go do the Mountain West again with a different name. But it's not going to be enough to be able to break up everything.
Plus there's the lawsuit. My favorite element of the lawsuit is that in order to get this scheduling arrangement between the Pac-12, the Pac-2, and the Mountain West, they had to promise to not poach Mountain West Conference schools to then draw them into a reconvened, whatever I'm just trying to say. Reconfigured. Thank you. That's why we have you on, Chip. Pac-12. So it was going to cost them a certain amount of money per school they poached from the Mountain West Conference. And the Pac-12's real argument was that you took advantage of us at a vulnerable time. And I'm sorry, that made me laugh out loud, whether it has legal standing or not. All right. 2 weeks ago, I did this to you, and you made me ashamed to do it. We didn't do it last week, but I'm doing it again anyway.
Oh.
I'm giving you my top 12.
Yeah, I don't talk college football playoff.
I know you don't, but I'm going to do it, and then you could just laugh at me or whatever. Texas number 1, right? That sounds fair. You're not going to argue with that. Ohio State number 2. Okay.
Ain't played nobody, but sure.
Right, exactly. Miami. I thought South Florida was going to be a problem. Miami, after a slow start, Miami pretty much did the thing. I still can't believe that we're hanging all of our hopes, maybe not, on Miami. Utah, I have number 4. Then the next 4 schools are all from the SEC. Georgia, who plays Alabama this week, and I want your thoughts on that game in a second. Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, and then I have Oregon, Missouri, the 6th SEC team, Clemson, and UNLV, although that'll be a different team next week when they have to bring back the ghost of Randall Cunningham to play quarterback for the Rebels. All right, did you find anything egregiously wrong with that?
Yeah, the 2 things that stand out the most are, number 1, I am not impressed with Missouri. And okay. I actually said on the Cover 3 podcast, I was encouraged that AP voters dropped them 4 spots because they have not looked like a top 10 team.
BC's great, though.
What?
BC is great, though.
But what about Vanderbilt taking you to overtime?
Vanderbilt is also great. Just ask Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech, I know. Yeah. Miami team total over. Virginia Tech's defense is cheeks.
I know. Look.
All right. So I would kick them out of the paint. I don't know who else besides Utah is going to jump up because Kansas State looks bad. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma State looks bad. Like UCF, which is going to be having a game that will be watched by a lot of people against the Colorado Buffs this week. UCF might be that second team up in there, but this to me, in that whole, like, if it's not SEC, if it's not Big Ten, the fact that USC and Michigan seem like they're falling from that top tier, the fact that the Big 12 doesn't have a bunch of really strong teams, I think it not only makes Miami and Clemson's odds of being able to make it stronger, could open up the door for Louisville, could open up the door for another team to be able to step through that door if they take advantage of it. The issue is then we're talking about teams in this ACC taking advantage of opportunities that are before them. And so far, outside of a Miami and a Clemson, look, Louisville plays at Notre Dame, right?
Absolutely.
They enter the chat with a win this weekend. So, the Big 12's the Big 12 looks like they're just all dragging each other into the muck, crabs in a barrel situation. I don't have a lot of faith in the SEC teams outside of the top 5 to be able to capitalize on whatever sort of, fake credibility or value they've built up based on, conference affiliation. So there's some meat out there for some teams to be able to take advantage.
Yeah, I know everybody's mad at that State got punked by the 2 real teams that they played. They got completely outclassed by Tennessee and Clemson. But A, I think it's very possible Tennessee is great, and B, maybe Clemson's really good. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that we'll know, a couple of games further down the road whether or not the Tigers are legitimate playoff caliber. My suspicion is they are. All right, Alabama and Georgia. Who do you like? We'll close on this game. It's a big one for Kalen DeBoer, is it not?
Oh my gosh, it's so massive. And that's why I almost want to go with the road team, because there just might be too much pressure. And I don't mean pressure as then he's actually feeling it. I'm talking about something I've mentioned before, but the home field disadvantage, when you've just got so much passion and if it doesn't go well, I tend to think that Jalen Milroe is so good with his legs that it is going to be a game that is just back and forth exchanging haymakers. But one thing about Alabama is that they have not yet this season had what I think is what is a defensive weakness been able to be exposed. Because they have freshmen and inexperienced players in the secondary. There have been wide receivers running open, and they have yet to play a quarterback that can hit those plays. And while you can argue, and I would agree with it, that Georgia's wide receivers have been underwhelming to this point, Carson Beck is an NFL talent that they have not faced. Western Kentucky didn't have the quarterback. Byron Brown was the quarterback, but the wide receivers couldn't make the catches. And then they crushed Tyler Van Dyke in the first quarter. Braden Locke couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. I mean, Alabama's defense has not been tested. So I tend to lean with the idea that Georgia's able to go in there and come out with the victory. I tend to think it's going to be higher scoring than you would think for a Georgia-Alabama game, but that is incredible respect to Jalen Milroe and observing what I think is a matchup advantage for the Bulldogs. And it's just, first year without Nick Saban, Kirby Smart's coming to town, former president in the house. I don't know why Tommy Tuberville's reportedly going to go. What do you? What do you?
Is he lost?
I mean, he probably has a lot of supporters in the stadium, when it comes to the ballot box. But in terms of collegiate affiliation, I mean, you're talking about Auburn's biggest rivals on each side are facing off against each other.
Maybe he's coming as an old Ole Miss coach.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe that's the deal, or as an old Cincinnati coach, Chip Patterson,
or a Texas Tech coach. See you later.
Go. At Chip_Patterson, CBSSports.com, and the Cover 3 podcast. Thanks, man. I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Y'all be